All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. 1 week away, or actually less than a week away now from the NHL season starting. We have the Preds and Sharks starting off the regular season on October 7th over in Prague. They play again on the 8th, and then the rest of the games will start on the 11th and the 12th. So obviously really looking forward to the NHL season. Yeah. Can't come soon enough. We're going to be getting into some must-draft rookies today. If you guys are doing your drafts a little bit later on, these are going to be guys you're going to be wanting to target a little later on in your drafts, obviously. Rookies is always a tough spot in the NHL. For people who don't know, a player who is considered a rookie is a player who didn't play 25 games in their season prior or any season prior to that. So there are definitely a couple names, like Matty Beniers played a couple. He's still considered a rookie. Logan Thompson, the goalie for the Golden Knights, also considered a rookie this year again because he didn't meet the qualification for enough starts last season. And even if looking at other Calder winners in past years, there's pretty much, you rarely see now guys from their draft year either winning the Calder or being in the Calder conversation. Yeah. Last 3 years, example, Moritz Seider, he was drafted in 2019 and he just won last season. Kirill Kaprizov is an extreme case of it. He kind of did like the Panarin as well. Yeah. Played in the KHL for a bit. He got drafted in 2015 and then won 2 seasons ago. And then Cale Makar, only a year or two removed from his draft year, he was playing in college and then finally got called up and played obviously a great season.
Yeah, so. And then like even Bunting too, he didn't win. He was in the race, but people were like, how is this guy a rookie? He's like 26 years old. He had like 3 seasons with the Coyotes, but never reached that 26 game threshold. So yeah, so those are the guys we're going to be looking at today. We do warn you, do not reach too hard on these guys. They are rookies at the end of the day. I know last year, for example, a lot of people are riding the high of Cole Caulfield. He looked really well in the playoffs. He did finish off the season really strong, but some guys got burned, possibly even lost their league last year because they spent that 4th round draft capital on him. So just be wary of that. These guys are later ads, but can definitely bring some value to your team, and especially in deeper leagues.
Yeah, 100%. I think right now the 2 earliest rookies off the board in most fantasy drafts are Owen Power and Logan Thompson, just because Logan Thompson does have the starting position. We won't be talking about those guys. We do have different guys. So Gav, getting into your must-draft rookies, what are one of the guys that you're targeting?
So the first guy I'm looking at this year is Marco Rossi. Okay. Nice. I think he's flying under a lot of people's radars, and mainly because he missed an entire season due to complications from COVID. So he had the whole year off. He went back home in Austria. Couldn't really do much of anything. He was kind of losing breath, even just walking up the stairs. Good thing is he rehabbed, came back to the AHL in Iowa, where he put up 53 points in 63 games, 18 goals, 35 assists. And he started off the year even stronger than that. He was actually playing with Boldy in Iowa. Started off over a point per game, fizzled down a bit, but that's a bit expected. You can't really... Not many people at that age put up those kind of numbers in the AHL, so that's really impressive to look at. A cool thing that I wanted to bring up too is that his offensive production has always been off the charts at every single level he's played at. So in the past 10 years, top OHL draft eligible seasons, he's second behind only Connor McDavid, and then ahead of guys like Mitch Marner and Tkachuk, even Taylor Hall too. So lots of offensive potential here. He's lit it up with Boldy in the AHL. He's projected to play on a line with Boldy. We'll see how that shakes out. On DFO, Ryan and I were just talking how
it's tough right now.
These always bounce around. You don't really know.
Especially in
but
preseason,
cool. Really important thing to note is that Minnesota's power play was lacking a lot last year. And head coach Dina Vason just came out and said, hey, this is why we're bringing in guys this year like Rossi and Kalen Addison to really boost that power play. In the preseason so far, I know it's really early, but they've been converting at a 29.7% with Kalen Addison and Rossi on that power play. I know that might not translate, but it's definitely a good trend to follow and keep an eye on. If you can get him at the end of your draft, he's currently going undrafted. I think he's a really good rookie to look at and possibly draft him this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you kind of touched on it, but you definitely want to be going after rookies who did obviously produce really well in their junior careers because that'll translate. One of the best examples I always bring up is Alex DeBrincat. He easily scored over 100 points in pretty much all of his junior seasons, and we saw that immediately translate.
And so many people were just like, oh, he's too small. Like, you can't do that there. Same kind of concerns with Rossi. He's only 5'9", but I was reading too that he was actually considered one of the most NHL-ready prospects in 2020, and then he missed the season and came back to the AHL, had to get his legs back together, but that's why I'm really excited about him this year. He could bounce back. He's been looking good in the AHL, so it's worth taking a flyer on him for sure.
Yeah, and he's playing center, and I think if you're looking at the Minnesota Wild's center depth, it's probably one of the weaker positions right now. Just so they do have obviously some young talent. One of them being obviously Marco Rossi, but Sam Steele as well. He was over in Anaheim before. Hasn't really gotten to that point where I think a lot of people thought he has. So I think there's definitely opportunity for Marco Rossi to kind of slot into this lineup.
Yeah, like number one center, Ryan Hartman right now. He could definitely leapfrog him. And I mean, if you can get an undrafted player that ultimately maybe in the middle, near the end of the season is playing with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, that's just insane value.
Yeah, they do. Obviously, they do have good centers, but not like skill centers. Kind of, they don't have like a Kirill in the middle, right? Like Eriksson and Hartman are very good role players, and they play the roles on the PK, and like they do what they're supposed to. But in terms of skill, I think Marco Rossi obviously has the upper hand.
Well,
so
let's hear your must draft.
Yeah, so my first guy that I'll be probably betting on him to win the Calder this year is Mason McTavish, left winger for the Anaheim Ducks. Got drafted third overall, back in 2020, I believe it was. So his ADP right now is around 165. He's actually only getting drafted in 4% of drafts on Yahoo Drafts right now, which is really low. But that's kind of the ambiguity that you kind of see with rookies. So the one thing I really like this kid, he showed how special he was at the World Juniors, playing with Team Canada. Played in 7 games in that tournament. He had 8 goals and 17 points. Like, that's up there with some of the top World Junior producers we've seen with John Tavares and other guys of that nature as well. He's pretty much produced at this level too, all throughout his junior career. He had a short stint in the NHL last season, but he did mostly play in the NHL or OHL. He got traded from Peterborough to Hamilton earlier in the year, and he ended up leading this Hamilton Bulldogs team to an incredible OHL season. They pretty much swept everyone in the playoffs. They won the OHL championship, claiming that J. Ross Robertson Cup, and then went on the Mem Cup. They did lose to St. John's in the finals, but if you look at McTavish's numbers throughout the regular season and playoffs on Hamilton, he was putting up video game numbers. In 43 games, he had 33 goals and almost 70 points. So those are obviously very staggering to see coming into his first full season in NHL. And it's tough to say exactly where he's going to line up right now, but I'd be shocked if he isn't in the top 6 at some point in the season. Maybe not right at the beginning, but Trevor Zegras did just go down with an injury in preseason. Got hit pretty hard against the Yotes. He's day-to-day, so I'm sure he won't miss a ton of time. But I expect Zegras and Terry to play together again. They were great last season. So I think McTavish could slot in with a guy like Ryan Strome, Silverberg, or Vetrano on the other wing as well. And Strome has centered a line with Panarin for last 2-3 seasons. And I think his experience could really help McTavish. We've seen Panarin put up good seasons. Obviously, McTavish isn't at Panarin's level yet, but I think he has the skill to become a really good player in this league. And he's currently slotted on the power play 2 right now. But if he gets off to a hot start, if there are injuries, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be on the power play 1 in terms of his skill and where his shot is right now. And like I mentioned before, being a number 3 pick overall, it carries some weight for sure. If you're also producing beforehand at tournaments like the World Juniors or the Mem Cup or OHL playoffs, they really have no choice but to give you every chance possible. And at this point, Anaheim, they're kind of going through this transition rebuild period. And I think they're going to give a lot of legway and a lot of room for McTavish to grow.
Yeah, and since McTavish played in the OHL, he doesn't really have much of a choice. He's way too physically dominant for the OHL now, and he can't play in the AHL yet. So, I think that's a great pick. It really depends on who he's going to end up playing with, I think, and the power play opportunities, but he can do it all. He's going to put up hits, and he's going to get some blocks too, so definitely valuable in Cats leagues. And if again, with all these players, you're getting them so late in the draft that
doesn't pan out.
Like, if it doesn't pan out, so what?
And then the last thing I will mention about McTavish, obviously one of those players that has a lot of skill, but even his short time in the NHL that we saw, his shooting percentage was almost 17%. Like, that's really high, and obviously you won't have the volume yet, but it's good to see that even in the 9 games he played, he was able to produce. So I really like Mason McTavish this year. So who's the second guy that you're looking at? Maybe I don't know technically if. Yeah, actually, he's probably on a little bit more radars than Marco Rossi, I would say.
Yeah, definitely on more radars.
Especially in the North American market as well.
Yeah, and surprise, surprise, Gavin.
Winnipeg Jets.
Takes another Winnipeg Jet. So my second, and I think most valuable rookie so far, I think he's the front runner for the Calder going into the season, and that's Cole Perfetti. And the reason I say this is because, like we talked before, he did actually gain some NHL experience last year, but he did not reach that 26-game threshold. His season was cut short in February or March at only 18 games. And in those 18 games, he had 7 points. That might not look like much at first, but he was getting a pretty limited ice time to get off the gate, getting a feel for the game. He was only averaging around 14 minutes per game. So this year, he has a really good chance to crack the top 6. He could be potentially playing on a line with Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, maybe even get slotted in with Scheifele at sometimes. I think he's going to be like mixed around all in that top 6 until they really see how the chemistry shapes out. They had some mysteries last year, so it's hard to say really how that all shapes out. I've even seen Blake Wheeler projected to be on the 3rd line. So there's lots of opportunity there. And I think that like if he does play on with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, that could sneakily be like one of the best lines in hockey. Because if you look at their floors, like Kyle Connor's probably good for 90 points, 100 points. Dubois 60 to 70. So I think that would put Perfetti's at a respectable floor of, say, maybe 60 points in a rookie season, which would be great.
Yeah, that would be huge.
I think the only downside here with Perfetti is that he'll only be getting PP2 time. That power play is pretty stacked, but if there is an injury or anything, then he could get promoted to that PP1. And that's just great opportunity there for him. Some guys going around him or ahead of him in the draft right now are Jamie Benn, Mason Marchment, Connor Garland, and Slavkovsky. So again, here at a 176 ADP, I think it's a great value pick. I know I say that a lot about a lot of guys, and especially Winnipeg Jets, but I really like Cole Perfetti this year.
Yeah, I can get behind this pick too. I mean, he looked really good in the rookie camp and the mini camp with the Jets, and then even the preseason as well. He's looked solid. His vision is very good. I think it's underrated, to be honest, his hockey sense. And we know he has a really good shot. We saw it in the World Juniors. I've seen it pretty much all over the place in the NHL for the last couple of years as well. Yeah. So one good thing to note, Gav kind of mentioned off the top when he was talking about Perfetti, looking at the Calder Trophy odds is actually a good way to kind of gain or kind of get some trust behind which rookies you should be drafting. Like looking at the top 6 favorites, it's Beniers, McTavish, Owen Power, Ken Johnson, Cole Perfetti, and Marco Rossi, and Jack Quinn. All these guys, like if the sports books really have them this high or the odds this way, there's a reason for it. They obviously think that these guys are going to be involved in their teams. They play on teams that maybe aren't really cup contenders at this point. So there's a lot of room for these players to kind of work their way into these lineups. So that's definitely something to look at. All the guys that we've listed pretty much are on this list. So definitely something to look at. The last guy that we're going to be talking about today, I'm super high on this guy. I watched him actually a decent amount when he's playing in college last year, and that's Jake Sanderson. He's a defense for the Ottawa Senators, and his ADP right now is around 145. One thing that I thought was pretty interesting in terms of people drafting him, he's 95% drafted in most leagues. So he's starting to become a pretty public pick. People think that he's really going to have a role on this Ottawa Senators team, and I really agree with it. Like I said, I watched him last year in North Dakota. He put up great numbers for a two-way defenseman. He had 8 goals and 26 points in 23 games. North Dakota, a really good collegiate program for hockey. And he can really do it all, to be honest. His defensive zone play is really solid and mature, but beyond his years for a 20-year-old. He's really smart in the offensive zone as well, being able to find the right areas to pass the puck. That's kind of like maybe a captain of a power play. And then he has a really quick release, so that's very important in terms of getting pucks to the net, obviously, and then creating havoc in front of the net for scoring opportunities too. This Sens decor is pretty average, I would say. Obviously, they have Thomas Chabot. But other than that, you're looking at role-playing defensemen with Travis Hamonic,
Nick Holden, Nikita Zaitsev,
Artem Zub, and then Eric Brandstrom, too, is one guy to name there, too. Eric Brandstrom, very interesting case. He was involved in the Mark Stone trade. A lot of people thought this kid was going to turn into a form of Erik Karlsson, but he really hasn't done much. And from what I saw last year, near the tail end of last year, people are kind of like, hey, listen, either trade this kid or play him because Ottawa wasn't really doing anything with him. So I think that leaves a lot of room and upside for Sanderson to be a top 4D at some point, heavily involved in this team, in the power play, penalty kill, and pretty much all the special teams. Him and Owen Power, I would think, are probably the top 2 rookie defensemen being drafted right now. Obviously, Owen Power maybe has a little bit more headway, and you can kind of lean into his direction a little bit more just because he was a first overall pick, but Sanderson was a 5th overall pick a couple years ago. So there's a lot of reason to think this kid is going to have a good year in Ottawa, and I think he will be able to move up this depth chart pretty quickly. Yeah,
I've heard a lot of people compare him as like the power light, and I think that is pretty accurate. Another big thing too is that the Senators are really going to be banking on him to take some of that workload off Chabot, because I talked about this in Must Draft Defenseman. Chabot plays 43% of possible ice time, like 2nd in the league among all players. So if they can get Sanderson to step up and kind of take some of that load off Shabbat. I think their back end will be more effective as a whole because, like Ryan said too, you're gonna, like there's guys like Zaitsev, Zub back there. Like Sanderson has a great chance to flourish here. He might not be on PP1 this year, but PP2 with a better forward core on the Senators. So I still like their second power play unit.
Yeah, definitely. Those are good points to bring up as well. And the last thing I'll say on Jake Sanderson is he was paired up a lot in camp and even in mini camp kind of games with Travis Hamonic, obviously a veteran. I think he's 32 or 33 now, and he had nothing but good things to say about Sanderson. He said he's a really good skater. He has really good mind for the game as well, and at 20 years old, that's obviously what you want to hear from a veteran. So that's obviously very good to note, and being drafted where he is right now, you can get great value on him if his upside reaches what we're thinking. So those are 4 rookies. Really guys that we're signing off for that we're going to be drafting later on in our rounds. Like we mentioned, you don't want to put too much stock into these rookies. So if you are looking to fill up those starting roles, I wouldn't go after rookies realistically other than maybe Matty Beniers. There's obviously a little bit of unknown with these guys. So be careful with that. But hockey season, only a couple days away. We're fired up.
Can't wait.
Hope you guys are too. Let us know in the comments if you agree with these rookies, if you think they're going to make an impact on their team. If not too, let's hear what other rookies you guys are drafting in your fantasy hockey leagues. That's all for us for tonight, but we'll see you guys next time.